Everything in your financial life, your income ceiling, your relationship with money, your ability to feel genuinely satisfied, comes down to one thing. Not your strategy, not your discipline, not even how hard you work. It comes down to the story running inside you about what kind of person you are, and what kind of person gets to have both wealth and happiness at the same time. Most people believe happiness comes after wealth. Save enough, invest enough, build enough passive income. Then, finally, you get to enjoy your life. So they sacrifice, they delay, they push joy to the back of the line and tell themselves it's waiting for them at some future finish line. And then something strange happens. They hit the milestone, the number they dreamed about, the net worth they wrote in a journal 3 years ago, and the feeling they expected to arrive doesn't. Or it comes for about 48 hours, and then it's gone, and they're standing there wondering what they did wrong. Then there's the other trap, the person who decided, somewhere along the way, that wealth and happiness really do conflict, that chasing money means becoming someone they don't want to be. So they protect their happiness, they stay comfortable, they tell themselves they're content, but underneath that contentment is a quiet financial life that never moves, and a low-level anxiety that follows them everywhere, because deep down they know they are not building anything. Two very different people, two very different strategies, the same outcome. Neither wealthy, neither truly happy. Here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. That outcome isn't a strategy problem. It isn't a knowledge problem. It isn't even a discipline problem. It is an identity problem. And identity problems cannot be solved with better tactics. This mindset, the one that separates the two as if they are opposites, is the exact reason most people never fully arrive at either. But there is a different way to think about this, and that is exactly what we are going to explore. Let me show you the belief that is quietly running your financial life. Most people believe that wealth is the destination, that if you accumulate enough assets, build enough net worth, generate enough passive income, happiness will naturally follow as the reward. They hold this belief the way they hold most inherited beliefs, without ever questioning it, without ever tracing it back to where it came from, without ever asking whether it is actually true. Until the moment it completely breaks down, until they hit the milestone and feel nothing. Here is what is actually happening. Wealth and happiness are not sequential. They are not cause and effect. They are not rewarded and sacrificed. They are parallel outputs of the same internal source. That source is your financial identity, the subconscious story you carry about who you are in relation to money, what you deserve, what is available to you, and what kind of life you are allowed to build. This is what we call wealth consciousness, and it is rooted in 3 things. The first is your belief architecture, the inherited money beliefs you absorbed before you were old enough to choose them. The second is your self-concept, the image you hold of yourself as a financial being, separate from your current bank balance. The third is your daily identity expression, the small, consistent actions that either reinforce or contradict the person you are trying to become. When these 3 things are aligned, something remarkable happens. Wealth building stops feeling like sacrifice, happiness stops feeling conditional, and your net worth starts moving, not because you discovered a better strategy, but because you stopped being in conflict with yourself about what you are allowed to have. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years studying the wealthiest people in America. He interviewed 500 of them. And what he found was not a set of strategies, it was a pattern of consciousness. Every person who built and kept real wealth had already become, on the inside, the person their external results eventually reflected. The financial freedom came second. The identity shift came first. But here's what most people miss about this. It goes much deeper than mindset, because this is not about positive thinking. It is not about affirmations. It is about understanding the specific psychological mechanism that keeps your wealth consciousness and your happiness frozen at the exact level your current identity believes it deserves. Let me show you a story. Not a motivational story, a real one, with a real mechanism you are going to recognize in your own life. His name was not famous. He was not a billionaire. He was a middle-income professional, let's call him David, who did everything the financial books told him to do. He saved 15% of his income. He invested consistently. He tracked his net worth quarterly. He read every wealth-building book he could find. On paper, he was doing everything right. And for years, his wealth building stalled at almost exactly the same level. He would make progress, then unconsciously find a way to undo it. A sudden expense he had not planned for, a business opportunity that turned out badly, a financial decision that made no logical sense to him 6 months later. He wasn't undisciplined, he wasn't irresponsible, he was sabotaging, and he had no idea why. The turning point came not from a new strategy, but from a single question someone asked him. What did money mean in the house you grew up in? He sat with that question for 3 days, and what he uncovered was this. In his family, money had always been a source of tension, scarcity, and quiet shame. The unspoken rule of his childhood was that wanting more than you had was ungrateful, that contentment was virtuous, that ambition was somehow dangerous. He had never consciously chosen those money beliefs. They had been installed in him before he was 8 years old, and for the next 30 years, every financial decision he made was running on that original operating system, even as his conscious mind was trying to build something completely different. When he began working on his financial identity, not his portfolio, not his income, but his identity, everything shifted. His wealth building did not just improve, it compounded, not because the strategy changed, because the person executing the strategy had changed. Now let me show you the mathematics of what identity lag actually costs you. Imagine 2 people. Both earn the same income. Both start investing at 30 years old, with $500 a month. Person A invests consistently, but carries an unexamined scarcity mindset. Every time their net worth reaches a certain level, anxiety sets in, decisions get worse, and progress quietly stalls. They average 6% annually because emotional interference costs them roughly 4% of compounding efficiency every year through mistimed decisions, premature withdrawals, and self-sabotage at critical moments. Person B does the internal work first. They examine their money beliefs, they rebuild their financial identity, and they invest with alignment rather than internal conflict. They average 10% annually, not because they found better investments, but because they stopped destroying their own progress. Over 30 years, at 6%, Person A has roughly $500,000. At 10%, Person B has over $1 million. Same income, same starting point. The only difference is the story each one was telling themselves about what they deserved. The amateur builds a wealth strategy and wonders why their emotions keep dismantling it. The professional builds a wealth identity first and lets the strategy live inside of that. Multiply that difference across a decade, across 30 years, across a financial legacy. But here is the part nobody talks about. The real battle is not out there in the market, in the economy, in the opportunity landscape. The real battle is in here, in the gap between who you currently believe you are and who you need to become to hold the wealth you are trying to build. Here is what is actually happening inside your financial life when you hit a plateau, when your wealth building stalls, when happiness feels perpetually deferred, when you keep making the same self-destructive financial decisions despite knowing better. Your brain has a financial identity set point. Think of it as a thermostat calibrated to a specific financial temperature, one that was set for you, largely in childhood, by everything you saw, heard, felt, and absorbed about money before you had the cognitive maturity to evaluate it critically. When your financial life rises above that set point, your subconscious experiences it as threatening. Not consciously. You will not sit down one morning and think, "I'm going to undermine my own wealth building today." It is far more subtle than that. You will take the profit a little early. You will hesitate on the investment that makes complete logical sense. You will spend impulsively at precisely the moment your savings reach a number that triggers discomfort. Each individual decision will seem rational in the moment, but when you zoom out and look at the pattern, you will see what is really happening. You are unconsciously returning to your financial comfort zone. You are maintaining your wealth consciousness at its current level because that level, as uncomfortable as it might be, is the level that feels like you.
This is what the identity lag spiral looks like from the inside.
You build momentum. Your net worth moves. You start to feel the gap between your old financial identity and your new results. The dissonance becomes uncomfortable. The scarcity mindset, the one you thought you had overcome, sends up a quiet signal. This isn't safe. This isn't who we are. And then, without even realizing it, your behavior shifts to close the gap. Not by growing your identity upward to match your results, but by pulling your results downward to match your identity. And you are back where you started, confused, frustrated, questioning your discipline, when the real problem was never discipline at all. Before we continue, if this is landing for you, if you are recognizing this pattern in your own financial life, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, because you need these reminders regularly, because identity work is not a one-time event, it is a practice. Now, let's get into the part most people miss entirely. The contrast is this. The person operating from scarcity mindset chases wealth because they are afraid of what life looks like without it. Every financial decision is made from a place of anxiety, lack, and urgency. And because the source of their action is fear, the emotional state never resolves, regardless of how much they accumulate. The abundance mindset builder acts from a completely different internal origin. They build wealth not to escape lack, but as a natural expression of who they are. The action is the same, the income might even be the same, but the emotional experience is entirely different. And here is the critical part. The long-term financial outcomes diverge significantly. Because fear-based wealth building is exhausting, inconsistent, and vulnerable to self-sabotage at every inflection point. Aligned wealth building is sustainable, compounding, and emotionally self-reinforcing. You cannot out-earn your self-concept. That is not a motivational phrase, it is a psychological law. And until the identity shifts, the results will always find their way back to the set point. So how do you actually change this? Not theoretically, practically, behaviorally. Here are 3 specific steps. Step 1. Audit your financial identity set point. This week, sit down and answer this question in writing. Not in your head, in writing. What did money mean in the environment you grew up in? What were the spoken and unspoken rules about wealth in your family? What beliefs were you handed about people who have a lot of money? What beliefs were you handed about people who want more? Write without filtering. You are not analyzing yet, you are excavating, because you cannot change a belief you cannot see. Most people never do this work. They wonder why their wealth building stalls, while the real ceiling is sitting unexamined in a story they absorbed at age 7. Step 2. Write your financial identity statement. Not a goal, not an affirmation, an identity declaration. Not, I want to build wealth. That is a desire, and it keeps wealth at arm's length. Instead, I am someone who builds wealth as a natural expression of who I am. Financial freedom is not something I am chasing, it is something I am becoming. The difference in language is not cosmetic. Your brain categorizes goals as external, things to pursue. It categorizes identity as internal, things that are already true and simply need to be expressed. Write the statement. Read it every morning before you make a single financial decision. Step 3. Take one aligned wealth-building action today that also brings genuine satisfaction. Not sacrifice. Not delayed gratification framed as suffering. Find the overlap, the action that is good for your financial future and consistent with who you want to become. Maybe it is investing in a skill. Maybe it is setting up an automatic contribution to a wealth-building account. Maybe it is having a financial conversation you have been avoiding. The action matters less than the alignment. You are training your nervous system to associate wealth building with identity expression, not deprivation. Stop waiting for wealth to make you happy. Start building happiness into the architecture of how you pursue wealth. Stop telling yourself the story that you have to choose. Start acting like someone for whom both are simply non-negotiable. The rule is this: build from abundance, not from anxiety. Every financial decision you make either reinforces your wealth consciousness or undermines it. Choose accordingly. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. This sounds good, but my financial situation is genuinely difficult. I don't have the luxury of mindset work when the bills are real. Here is the answer. The bills are exactly why this matters. Because the identity that created the current situation cannot be the identity that solves it. You do not need to fix the finances first and then work on the mindset. You need to change the internal architecture so that the financial decisions start to change. The outside moves when the inside moves, not the other way around.
All of this, every step, every reframe, every identity declaration, only works if one deeper thing changes. And that is what I want to leave you with. In the end, wealth and happiness come down to this. You cannot receive on the outside what you have not yet become on the inside. That is not poetry. That is the mechanism. Your financial identity is the thermostat. Your wealth is the temperature. And no amount of external effort will hold a result that your internal set point keeps correcting back down. If you have stayed with this video to the end, you are not someone who watches this kind of content passively. You are someone who is genuinely willing to do the real work, not the comfortable surface work of better strategies and smarter tactics, but the deep work of becoming a different person. And that willingness is not common. Most people will never go here. Most people will keep adjusting the external variables and wondering why the internal experience never changes. Here is what I want you to see for your own life. When you do this work, when you genuinely shift your financial identity, when you close the gap between your current self-concept and the person your ambitions require you to become, three things begin to happen. Your relationship with money stops being adversarial and starts becoming collaborative. Your happiness stops being something you defer and starts being something you carry into the process. And your wealth building stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like the most natural expression of who you are. That is not a dream state. That is the inevitable result of an aligned identity compounding over time. If this shifted something for you today, even slightly, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment with one money belief you are ready to let go of. And if you want to keep doing this real internal work, subscribe, because this is only the beginning. The market of life does not reward those who chase happiness or sacrifice it. It rewards those who finally decide they deserve both.